Hey all, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, this is a granny of Granny and the Geek, and we are doing our Critical Role recap of this past week's episode of Campaign 4. Although I am behind, and so I'm playing catch-up, so I'm actually, I think, 2 weeks back. So this is episode 6 that I'm recapping. Episode 7 should be out Monday or Tuesday, and then I should be on time and on track again, which would be nice. So episode 6 was Knives and Thorns, and it opened on Valus and Octus. It started specifically with Valus and Brennan asking her about a memory. And so we found out a couple of things that Valus has or had, we don't know, siblings. A sister named Maywin and a brother named Arthas. Yeah, Arthas. And her mother teaching her, like, she was very young in this memory she was having, and her mother teaching her how to remember things, because the elves are so long-lived, and, over decades and then centuries, remembering things can become challenging. And so they're having this really wholesome kind of family moment, and her mother takes a minute to, like, focus, and her eyes go white, and it's almost like she's, like, taking a snapshot, something that will remain a touchstone that she can recall later. And she's trying to teach Valus how to remember things like that. And so it seems a really kind of somber moment, and then the camera pans and you see that she is with her little group of seekers, but everyone else is sleeping. But as an elf, Valus doesn't sleep, and she turns and looks, and Octus is awake, because now Octus doesn't sleep either. And so there's this really kind of sweet, tender moment between the two of them, where Octus is kind of asking, well, okay, so what do you do if you don't sleep? And how do you deal with that in not so many words? And Valus kind of big sistering him, and talking about how she says she still dreams, but it's not, I wouldn't really call it dreaming if you're not asleep, but she certainly recalls things. And it was a really nice little moment. It didn't last very long. It was kind of the cold open before the announcements and the ads and the opening title sequence. So, and I was a little confused because it was supposed to be, or at least as far as I knew, it was kind of focused on the soldiers' table, or was supposed to be. So I was a little confused as to why we were starting with Valus and Octus, but I was really glad that we did. So after the opening sequence, we immediately jump right back to where we were at Albid's, in the middle of the woods. And Tyranny, it's the morning after, and Tyranny is asking Albid about his late wife. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's Jessavi? Not sure how to pronounce it, but she wanted to know, like, what her favorite things were, and she was very, like, kind of ham-fisted about it, and everyone was kind of looking at her like, what are you doing? You don't ask somebody, especially first thing in the morning, but you don't know him like that to be asking about his dead wife. But with a little trepidation, he answers her, and basically, when thinking about her favorite things, settles on a kitchen knife with a really kind of ornate handle. And he says that it was, of her tribe, of her family, and that she carried it with her through lots of travel and many years, and used it to care for their family. And you could tell it really meant a lot to him. And for whatever reason at first, because we don't know, Tyranny starts kind of obsessing over this knife. And even though Wick kind of shakes his head at her, and Thimble almost threatens her to leave the knife alone, while no one's looking, Tyranny steals the knife. So Albid is upstairs when Tyranny does this, and he's been working on this sword for Thimble, which he basically repurposes one of the tin soldiers that his daughters used to play with, one of their swords, and he repurposes it and reinforces it and makes it sharp and sturdy, so it's not a little tin sword, even though it looks very much like it's made out of tinsel. But he reinforces it, he makes it stronger. He manages to, years ago, to have put a little enchantment on it. And so one of the things that it does, which we find out right away, is that once a day it can animate or bring to life small toys. I imagine he did this for the delight of his children. And so the Thimble's over the moon. It kind of, on her, looks a bit like a broadsword or a bastard sword, but it has the stats, Brennan said, of a standard scimitar. But it's really cool, and it winds up bringing to life this little deer with wheels, which I think Thimble is planning on using as a mount because she asked Albid for it. I forget it. I forget the deer's name. Sir something. It's really cute. Anyways, he also gives the party 3 eggs, 2 enchanter eggs and 1 greater enchanter's egg. He, gave them. I think Taor is carrying them all at this point, but there's a blue one that is supposed to basically cause you to be hidden. I'm assuming that's kind of like invisibility. There's a yellow one that causes sickness to anyone in the area where it breaks. And the greater enchanter's egg is a multicolored one that just has a random helpful effect. But all of them, the reason he gave them to the party is because they're getting ready to expire. They've got 30 days left. So they've got 30 days to use these eggs, and so hopefully they will be useful within those 30 days. So they're all getting ready to leave. They pack up, they thank Albid, and they head out. About 45 minutes out, I guess the property is pretty vast, other than the little tower and spot that we actually see and meet Albid. They run into Tyranny just as she's about to kind of pass that last threshold of his property. Has this crazy profound experience where she has a flashback to her. Well, first she sees an image in the knife's blade. It's all kind of misty and magical, and something odd or unusual is certainly happening. Excuse me. And she looks down at the blade, and in the reflection she sees Albid frantically searching the house for the knife, and just being heartbroken and forlorn about it. And she starts feeling really bad and kind of panicked, and then she has this flashback of her origins in the pit, and some dark demonic voice basically telling her that suffering is your domain. And when she like kind of snaps out of it, she freaks and she confesses to Wick that she stole the knife. And Wick is kind of like, oh god, this is not good, but tells her basically to repent. But like she is feeling bad, and Wick is thinking that they're not that far, and that maybe they can just return it. But it's been about 45 minutes, so Brennan points out that it would be an hour and a half by the time they go back to Albid's and then back to the point where they were. They will have lost like an hour and a half. So Wick is trying to figure out what to do, and Tyranny just kind of blatantly confesses to the group that she stole the knife. Thimble's not happy, which we expected from her earlier kind of veiled, not so veiled threat. But Cadigan loses his shit. Like, gets pissed. Like, more emotionally invested than I have seen him thus far, because he's just kind of rolling with things, it seems. And so he demands the knife. Tyranny tries to okay, but calm down, and he's not having it, and she gives him the knife. And so he sends Wulfric with a scroll, a little note, and initially we think the blade, back to Albid. Later we learn that he has actually separated the blade from the handle being the sentimental portion, and so he wants to return that to Albid immediately. But because of how Tyranny described her experience with the knife and what she saw, it seems like Cadigan is convinced that it has become a relic of some potency, although they don't know why or what for or what it means. And so he keeps the blade. Doesn't tell anybody. So everyone in the group thinks that he sent the whole thing back. And so it's definitely an interesting turn of events. But for a good half, maybe a little more than half of the rest of the episode, Cadigan doesn't have Wulfric, which provides him with bonuses and advantages in certain situations because he has his animal companion. So they all continue on from there, and the party ends up encroaching on Hawthorne's glade, which Thimble had learned about from Brick Meadow previously. And they're attacked by fairy defenders. No, they didn't even know that they were necessarily in Hawthorne's glade, or close to it anyways. But it doesn't matter. They respond and they get attacked. And so Teor blasts one of them with radiant energy, which he actually, the one he shoots, I think it's either honeycomb or honeysuckle. I think it's honeysuckle, but it could be honeycomb. I don't know. With radiant light, Thimble or Wick radiates light, trying to gain protection, and Thimble is trying to talk everybody down, basically telling everyone to just calm down for a minute and take a fucking breath. And it's actually less of Thimble and more of Wick and a little bit of Teor, but Wick has this response, like he floats off the ground, there are wings for a minute, he is all surrounded by light and is looking very much like, his forefathers' descendant. not that they're literally descended, but he was created from that angelic or celestial magic. And so they all stop fixated by the light that these large folk are wielding. Honeysuckle, I'm going to call her that until I find out otherwise, is healed by Taor, who, once everything calms down, is like, oh shit, let me go and help this little fae that I've inadvertently injured. Well, not so much inadvertent, but possibly mistakenly. And she comes to and is completely smitten with Taor. Thinks he is a sun god, I think she calls him. While the red cap, known as Skinner, immediately hates Taor. Now, I don't think he liked him in the first place. I don't think he likes any big folk, but the impression I got is that he kind of has a thing for Honeysuckle, and the minute that Taor hit her, as far as Skinner was concerned, it was on sight. And so for her now to be enamored with Taor, no, he absolutely fucking hates Taor. And their leader, Hawthorne, who the glade is named for, is a dryad who agrees to bring them back to the glade. They have seen Sid, but she won't really say more until they get back to the glade to talk. So when they get back to the glade, the first thing they see is this enormous hawthorn tree, which is Hawthorne. She can choose to walk around separate of the tree or re-embody the tree, which is her natural state, I guess you would call it. And that's at the center of the glade. And then at the root of the tree is what they call a moon crystal. And they say something about it changing and having, different properties with the waxing and waning of the moon. So that's why they call it the moon crystal, and it sits at her roots. She also has 2 advisors. I don't know if that's like official or just how it seems, but she certainly seems to have opposing views on either side of her. She has Subri, who is a fawn, whose antlers have been cut off, it looks like, by humans or larger folk at some point, and she either had or has the gift of prophecy or foreshadowing or foretelling. I don't know whether those were tied to her antlers, but that ability seems to not be as strong anymore. And she seems to have a lot of trauma around him, which makes perfect sense. And then Sallow is the other advisor, who is a dark fae hag who trades in memories and likes to drown people. They describe her as, looking kind of wet and greasy or whatever. But when she lays out in the water, it all kind of, she just looks like pond lilies. Like you wouldn't notice her until it was too late, essentially. Kind of like a crocodile, I guess, or an alligator. So, while all that's happening, Taor is kind of wandering around, and he meets an owl fae. The person is described, Brendan kind of describes them as looking like a sprite or a fae, except that they have, it almost looks like they're wearing like a hood made out of like an owl's head and then the wings. But upon closer inspection, you see that there's no mask. It's just like a humanoid looking chin under this beak and eyes and kind of cowl looking top, and then wings, which have been at least one of them has been broken. And so Taor helps him to heal, and they start talking. And his name is Jouf. I think they said his name was Jouf. Who gives him a letter. He was actually on his way to Dalmukiar to meet with Thiazi. And, Taor has to tell him that Thiazi is dead. And he's like, okay, so there's not really much sense in me going there. And so he gives him this letter that he was supposed to deliver to the Arcanad, which is Belair's museum. He doesn't open it. He takes it. So we don't know what it says yet. Thimble learns that Cid was sent to something called the Wraith Tree. Subri lets her know this and says that he was basically sent there to die. But that Sallow could tell her where the Wraith Tree is, because Sallow was the one who sent Cid to the Wraith Tree. Cadigan decides to go with her to go see Sallow, and they do, and she flirts a little bit with Cadigan, which is funny, and then that's when it comes out that she trades in memories, and so she offers to trade a memory of Thiazi teaching her how to read and write in exchange for the location of the Wraith Tree. And the memory is very sweet, and of course Laura is incredible, and she gets so emotional, and she conveys so much with her performance. I just love Laura. Anyways, so she's explaining how she had a hard time spelling Thiazi, and so she got frustrated, and she took to calling him Thaz. And that's a nickname that he said he hadn't been called since childhood, and only allows Thimble to call him that. So she is reluctant to give up that memory, obviously. But Cat decides to speak to her in Thieves' Cant, and hopes that the hag Sallow doesn't know it, and basically tells her, go ahead and trade the memory, I'll remind you, I'll be listening, and I'll remind you. And so she trades, and somewhere in the process of doing that, like in the ripples of the water, you kind of see the memory. And I don't know if I got confused somewhere or got distracted somewhere, but it definitely felt and sounded like they saw the memory of Kaz's betrayal. In fact, they got a detail that they didn't have before. So, like, my thought when watching it was that she traded a memory of Cid's. So if Cid gave up that memory to get out of the forest, and she then aimed him toward the Wraith Tree, does that mean he doesn't even know why he's out here anymore? Like, that's definitely a concern of mine. But they make the deal, and they all go to the Wraith Tree, which we quickly find out is the corpse of a awakened tree, or I guess like in Tolkien it would be an ent that was killed by a wraith. And so the dead tree is still present, and the wraith is still present, and the wraith summons basically a small horde of an undead, and it isn't looking terribly good. And Wick confronts the darkness of this creature. It's kind of layered, because like Wick does all right. I mean, he's not a physical fighter. The fact that he's with the soldiers' table is hilarious. Tyranny does what she can, but Wick, with the radiant powers and abilities, is able to do some respectable damage to the Wraith. But somewhere in the course of things, he learns that the Wraith is, or was in life, a cleric. And it realizes that so is Wick, and says to Wick at some point, I was promised paradise too. And kind of almost causes Wick to falter for a moment, but he manages to pull it together. Thimble figures out the second power of her little sword that Albid made. He had originally made it to, and enchanted it to protect his daughter from bad dreams. And so the mechanics of it is that it has a plus 2d6 to incorporeal creatures, which this thing is. And so she goes right after it and does, again, a significant amount of damage. It's not a quick back and forth. The battle takes a while, and Teor winds up being the one to destroy it with Smite. And when he does, kind of gets a glimpse into the underworld and how bursting at the seams it is. And they think it's over until they realize that this big red glowing rune on the tree, because some of them are aware of Celestial, which is what it's written in, which is a little weird. It comes out kind of that the tree is basically this thing's phylactery, and as long as the tree is intact, this thing's going to keep coming back, and the undead are going to keep doing their thing. And so they endeavor and succeed in setting the tree on fire. And so the Wraith doesn't come back, and all the undead fall dead. So this is a good thing. And immediately they check, obviously, all the bodies. Sid's body is not there. So that's a good thing. The party continues on from there. Now, I will say that I'm trying to figure out how Sid went to the Wraith tree and wound up not being dead. And like most of these undead didn't have any weapons. They were like the injuries they said Brennan described were basically that the undead literally tear victims apart with their bare hands, and then those victims rise and do the same. And that's what they were trying to do to our heroes, for lack of a better word. And so, yeah, they got to figure out where Sid is, where Sid went, and what's next. In regards to Albid, when Wulfric comes back, and he does about the beginning of that fight with the Wraith tree, and actually got hurt pretty badly at one point. See, Robbie, you can't tempt fate with Brennan. But Albid did send back a note letting Cadigan know that, I don't know why you kept the blade, but that wasn't the important part to me, basically, and I hope that it helps you in whatever way that you need it to. And thanked him profusely for returning the hilt, and told him he was free to come bathe in his stream whenever he wanted. So that's good that there weren't any hard feelings, because and I don't know if he told him who took it, although I'm guessing Albid can probably figure it out. He really liked Thimble. He seemed to really connect with Teor as well. Another thing that I had forgotten to mention is that while they were still there, Thimble had talked about his garden kind of being in disrepair, and him saying that it was meant to be tended by family, and it's just him now. And so she pointed out that a lot of the Fae folk are really good with gardens, and a lot of them don't have a safe place to be, and that if it was okay with him, if she found someone that she thought would be helpful to him in that regard, if it was okay with him, she would send them his way. because, you know, they would then have a safe place where he could protect them and they could help him tend to the garden. So, and he agreed to that. She did not extend that to anybody in the glade. You know, going forward, hopefully will... Albid, Brennan gave Albid a lot of personality and a lot of lore. Like, we got names of his daughters, names of his wife, background of his wife a little bit with this, why it became a relic, whether it was tyranny's emotional response to taking the knife, or if it kind of already had that in it. We don't know. But Brennan gave him a lot. Like, really fleshed him out. And so, but Brennan does that sometimes with throwaways, so it's really tough to say. I hope that we either wind up running into one of his daughters, or learning something about, you know, their fate, or finding some fairies to help him with his garden or something. I hope we see him again, and I hope that it's a positive. But again, you know, Brennan, he likes to say where he'll throw out like a bunch of different seeds and just leave it to the players, which ones they pick up, which ones they don't pick up. You know, he said when talking about the villains of this world that, you know, there are several. Which ones the party will choose to focus on or make a priority is up to them. There may be things that he throws out that the party never picks up. Anyone who's out there who has ever DM'd a D&D game knows that that's kind of goes with the territory. But we'll see. I'm liking the development of the characters. I'm liking the formations of relationships that are happening. I will also say, and I wanted to bring this up, I don't know what's going on, but I don't know whether it's just going to be a best friend kind of situation, but I'm really kind of getting vibes. Not sure what kind of vibes, but I'm getting vibes between Wick and Tyranny. Tyranny, I don't know, it seems like, you know, she was assigned to him to just kind of keep him busy and keep him away from what the rest of the family was doing, but she knew the truth. And she seems awestruck by Wick. His innocence, his faith, his belief, his optimism. And I'm not sure if that's all it is. She just finds him inspiring and wonderful in a platonic way, or if she low-key is kind of crushing on Wick. I don't know. And Wick seems oblivious to anything romantic. He is technically betrothed, although he doesn't seem too terribly happy about it. So I don't know. It may be a little too early to ship Wickeny, but I'm telling you, I wouldn't be shocked. So I'm going to say it now, so that if it happens later, I'm not sitting here going, no, really, I thought it was going to happen. I knew it. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. So that's where I'm at. Otherwise, I haven't gotten any vibes of any kinds of relationships, obviously, other than Taisha and Hal. So we'll see what happens. All right, guys, gals, and critters. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. You know, let me know in the comments who your favorite characters are so far, what you think of different relationships. Do you guys think I'm crazy with the Wickeny thing? Or are you feeling it too? Let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to smash the notification bell so you know when I drop new content. And yeah, we'll see you next time.